Good afternoon, everyone. I am Rana Ravi. I am from MSME and Startup Committee ICAI. I would like to welcome CA Nitin Kisanmal Mehta sir, who will be take today's session, and welcome CA Puneet Kumar Jain sir, who will be coordinate today's session. As today's our topic will be legal remedies and role of CA in MSME. Now I would like to request our coordinator sir to take a moment to formally introduce and welcome our speaker sir. Puneet sir.
Thank you, Ravi
Take.
sir. Thank you very much. I grab the opportunity to welcome you all in today's MSME Pathshala Series 41, organized by Committee of MSME and Startup of ICI. I once again welcome CA Nitin Mehta sir, advocate and a distinguished personality as a chartered accountant in today's program, who will be our guest speaker on the topic legal remedies and role of CA in MSME. About a small background about Nitin Mehta sir, he's a distinguished professional who started as a chartered accountant and turned advocate 2 decades ago with dealing in taxation, economic crimes, commercial and corporate law. He holds a BCom degree and he's ranked 9th in DISA and a diploma degree in international tax trade laws. He initially practiced as a chartered accountant before transitioning to laws in 2002. He trained under senior advocate Mr. Mihir Thakore for a decade, specializing in civil and corporate matters before establishing his own practice. As key achievements, he's been appointed as official liquidator by the Gujarat High Court. He is special appointee by CBDT in the Vodafone case, appointed as the youngest senior standing counsel for CBDT in 2013 to 2017, overseeing direct and international taxation, including transfer pricing across Gujarat, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh. Also, he's appointed as an expert on Indian land law matters in the courts in USA. He specialized in direct and indirect taxation matters, commercial disputes, corporate law, intellectual property rights, admiralty law, economic crimes, and including matters under Benami and PLMA regulations. His expertise extends to both domestic and international arbitration, with a particular focus on MSME arbitration. Mr. Mehta has represented clients across a wide spectrum of forums, including Supreme Court and various high courts, various tribunals like NCLT, NCLAT, ITAT, CSTAT, VAT, IPR, Electrical Tribunal, SAT, DRT, PLMA, Benami Adjudication Authorities, and its appellate authorities and tribunals. And other courts like consumer, civil, commercial courts. Over the course of his career, he has managed to deal or serve to cumulatively amounting to rupees 40,000 crores. A regular speaker at professional and industrial forum and ICI events, Mr. Mehta also trains income tax department officers as a faculty. His unique perspective, blending accountancy and law, makes him an authority on empowering MSME in dynamic legal and regulatory environments. I welcome Nitin Mehta sir for picking up the session ahead. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Puneet ji. A very good afternoon, distinguished chartered accountants, and welcome to you all for this enlightening session on legal remedies and the role of chartered accountants in MSME sector. As the saying goes, challenges are opportunities in disguise. And for MSME, these challenges often lie in navigating legal and financial complexities. You, all chartered accountants, as trusted advisors, are the bridge between resilience and recovery, guiding MSME towards stability and growth. Today, let us unlock those opportunities and explore how your role can be transforming force in the MSME sector. Now, with the permission of Mr. Jain, if I can share the slideshow, which is just going to be a touch point Otherwise, it would be more of me speaking and trying to explain. I don't know whether there can be an interactive session or it would be monologue and everyone would only be hearing me. How can it be, Mr. Jain? Can there be there will be no...
There can be interaction, sir. Anyone, if want to discuss, they can discuss. It's open. They can chat or even they can interact.
Sir,
Fair
they
enough.
can ask you a question via chat.
Via
They
chat
can't
only.
speak.
There
Yeah,
is
they
no...
can't speak.
Okay, that's
Oh,
okay.
okay, sir. Thanks.
Fair enough. So I would love to have the questions and viewpoints on what my take is on this subject. Therefore, let us, Krisha, can you share the screen? Yeah. So now, the topic of today, as you all know, is legal remedies and role of chartered accountants. So first, chartered account in MSME sector. So let us first understand what is the MSME contribution to our GDP and why we are having this entire Patshala on MSME sector per se. The reason is very clear on your screen that they contribute to almost 30% in GDP. They manufacture products as varied as 6,000 in number. Their manufacturing output is 36% of the total output. And they have a staggering export of 47.79% and employ almost directly, indirectly around approximately 20.39 or around crore of our people, who today is a very, very burning issue, whereby employment is a very burning issue. So this is a sector. Now, why again, let's understand some more important figures with respect to the MSME. So the MSME is spread in manufacturing, the activity-wise spread of MSMEs. In manufacturing, it is almost 31%. Trade is 36%. Other services around 33%. And if you see the divide almost is equal between rural and urban. Now, the very important highlight would be the distribution. If you see this slide, around 51% of MSME is in rural, while only 49% is in urban India. This completely makes it so significant, and the opportunity for the faculty, for this particular profession of chartered accountants, to be able to handle them and deliver to all these rural MSMEs, which do not have that comfort or that access to the experts which their counterparts in urban India will have. So this is again the percentage.
Sir, you are mute.
I'm sorry. So this is how the classes of India are divided in the category of MSME. If you see, only 39%, approximately 32% is others, while rest of them are backward class, SC or ST, which again emphasizes the need of professionals like chartered accountants to handhold MSMEs, because it is only this experience which you all bring will be able to help them to navigate this uncharted waters, whereby these entrepreneurs are doing their bit, but are not stepping up in any which way. Again, this is an employment which it grants around formal employment is around 11 crores. These are all figures from the annual report of MSME 22-23. The rural and urban divide, you can forward it. Yes, next. Now, if you see the total employment which is being generated is around majority is in micro sector, while small and medium are little bit less than the micro, and we will come to the reason why is so. Now, the investment which is made in MSME, if you see micro, you see the blue portion, which is up to 5 lakhs. The majority of micro are falling in an investment category which is less than 5 lakhs of rupees, while in medium it is almost equally distributed, and to some extent the small is there. We will come why an enterprise becomes a micro, small and medium in some time. This again is the turnover. If you see what is crucial here is the small blue size, where the turnover is around 5 to 25 crores, which forms the majority of the small enterprise. Now, what our institute in that sense says about MSME and about CA's assistance to MSME. They say that CAs are trusted financial advisors and provide services of project financing, working capital, asset management, export promotion advice, budgetary, forecast, financial, preparing standards, so-and-so, assisting in design and operating efficiency of internal control. I am today not going to talk on any of these aspects. We are going to go in uncharted areas where probably many of you have not still ventured, which is in that sense, other than just simply financial services, a pure financial service, which is otherwise known as a traditional field in our terminology. Okay, so generally, when you ask a businessman about CA, they say that CAs are required from a cradle to grave. So, right, their services would start from a cradle to grave. I would say that it starts from womb to tomb, and we will identify why it is from womb, which is before birth, and tomb would be after the grave is dug, someone is laid to rest. Still, there's a tomb which has to be built upon after the death. So CAs, in my view, provide services from womb to tomb. Let us understand why. From whom, when I say the entrepreneur, an MSME entrepreneur comes only with an idea. He has an idea which he wants to pursue and do business in. What happens thereafter? With that idea, he comes to a chartered accountant who provides in a gamut of services, which for sake of compartmentalization, I have divided into A, B, C, D category. Now let us see what are the services which a chartered accountant can provide to an entrepreneur who just has come with an idea to him. Now, first is structuring services. So, according to me, if you have this mindset, because it's a mindset which you will have to, as a chartered accountant, develop to be able to provide and think beyond the traditional services. So, if you see, the MSME is either at a starting stage, which is where he just has an idea. What does chartered accountant do? He helps him provide building a business plan, a model around his idea, figures out what can be the investment which is required, figures out what the finances would be like, and also figures out what are the projected sales or turnover in coming few years. It is only based on this accurate or somewhat accurate estimate. These two words are diametrically opposite, but this is where the chartered accountant brings his expertise to say that a properly drafted business plan, after going in depth with respect to the requirements of raw material, the kind of conversion of a raw material into a product, the cost associated with it, both direct, indirect, both uh, operating, variable, fixed. After considering all this, he comes to a particular turnover figure, a particular profit margin, and helps the entrepreneur to basically plan his business henceforth. Why this is also important? This is important for him to actually figure out what advice should he give to the MSME to build a status upon, or whether the MSME should go as a proprietor, as a partnership, as a company, as an LLP, or probably go as a in a cooperative manner or association of person. There are multiple ways a status of the business can be, and the type of organization will determine upon that. So what goes into understanding a business plan is the most important things. Then obviously the legal uh, provisions, like for example, certain requirements which will have individual and HUF will have, while a partnership will not, while partnership will be governed by certain provisions and others won't. There are provisions of MAT example applicable to companies. So all these things will have to be taken into consideration before a chartered accountant advises on the formation and the form in which an organization or the business will have to be built up. Suppose, for example, a product is such that which has to be exported. One will have to see what will be the aspect of unlimited and limited liability. If that product requires, let us say, licensing by government authorities, a land has to be procured by way of licensing, then how it, whether it will be better in individual name, how and what is the age. So even the age of the entrepreneur is so very important for advising whether one has to go with proprietorship, partnership. As we all know, around 60-70% of today's businesses are run as a proprietorship firm. What happens to it uh, post the proprietor, uh, post the survival of the proprietor, so and so forth, are many questions which actually will have to be addressed at right at the inception. There may be certain deductions which are available to specified businesses like warehousing under 35 AD and so forth, which a businessman generally will not be aware about, but it is the chartered accountant who will provide his expert knowledge. If it's an international transaction, then transfer pricing, double taxation, mitigation is all what we'll have to consider while advising on this. The second category, so the first category was with respect to what the status would be. Second category is that if once the company is formed, there are many one-time licensing and registration requirement which a businessman will have, like getting a GST number, PAN number, multiple other if he's exporting, a custom identification number. There, if it is there's an IPR, then IPR registration. There are labor laws which has to be taken. There are manufacturing licenses which needs to be obtained. According to a reasonable estimate, around 132 licenses or registrations are required for a business meant to start with a bare minimum requirement of purchasing and selling. Obviously, if he is a beginner and his MSME Udyam registration has to be obtained, which according to me, even if the turnover in the first year is more than 250 crores, one should obtain, because till the turnover is as much, there will be a benefit of MSME available to him. Now let us see, uh, after this one time, please think it over, that one time registration has been done, licenses have been obtained, what happens thereafter? There are periodic compliances which shall have to be done. There are statutory compliances and contractual. Statutory will be obviously tax filing, regular returns, the labor law, which is today one of the very reason why we are so back in east to do business. This requires reforms which a strong government like the one in present uh, should be doing. The environmental laws, which actually are getting stricter day by day. When I started practicing around 23, 24 years back, the laws were not as strict, were not as strictly implemented. But today, there's whole set of environmental laws which can actually speaking destroy a particular business and end to its closure. Or in fact, not even start, because if without clearances, the production cannot even start. Then there are obviously corporate laws, FEMA in case of transactions which are outside India, SEBI and RBI related compliances. These are all periodic, which can be quarterly, monthly, 6 monthly, or annual, or biannual, depending. Now, let me give an example of a contractual compliance. So what happens is, uh, there's an interesting case which came to us. One of our clients was a dealer of a very big brand. He was a dealer for some good years. Now, that brand wanted to change his dealership or take away the dealership from him and give it to someone else. They could not have done otherwise, because there were not issues which could lead to something like a change of dealership. This client got a notice for change of dealership, which he brought to us, and the reason cited was a non-compliance of a contractual clause, limited to the extent that the principal required under the contract to be given after the end of every financial year a audited balance sheet of my client who is the dealer. Now, this was such a small requirement, but a contractual requirement which went unnoticed by my client, and therefore he received a termination notice. It was as simple as taking 5 minutes out, asking the clerk to or a peon to just courier that report. But because it goes unnoticed, he had to face a consequence of termination of a long-term contract, which was his bread and butter, to say the least. So a chartered account can really help all these businessmen who otherwise are only engrossed in doing their regular business, which is purchase, sale, manufacturing, marketing, so on and so forth, and just do not care about the contract, or it is not even in their mind about what are the compliances and contracts clauses in the contract, which could thereafter lead them into litigation, trouble, and maybe a closure of the business as well. Tax compliances, obviously, direct, indirect, wealth tax is no more there, but there are house property taxes if you are in a rented premises. You can offer international tax services, which are transfer pricing, compliances, direct tax planning. indirect GST, customs, anti-dumping is a very, very big area of practice. Now, this can an anti-dumping understanding of anti-dumping duties can actually make or break a business. And there is where a CA can play a very important role. With his understanding of the dumping duties, either he can help his client who is facing anti-dumping duties because of his imported products. There is a anti-dumping levied by this particular our country, or when he is exporting, then the other country has levied anti-dumping duty, and it has to be contested very heavily. There are huge figure works, papers to be prepared, justification to be given as to why there is no dumping, and therefore CA's role is very, very critical there. It's a extremely important practice area. Now, labor laws can the today the penalties are so heavy, and the prosecutions are so widely undertaken and alleged by the authorities because of any breach of any of these terms of or the statutory provisions. Simpliciter not filing, non-payment is definitely an issue. But apart from no, even if you're paid, you're deducted properly, the you've not kept some registers, or if a inspector comes visits, or in fact does an audit, and there is not sufficient compliance, you can really face a lot of uh, penalties and can result in closure of a unit as well. We have heard so many times that their units have been closed because of non-compliance of labor laws. So again, an understanding of the chartered accountants of labor laws, the practice area to maintain the compliance therein is again a very, very important field for chartered accountants which can be looked at. Environmental law opportunities. This I fell short of as to how a chartered accountant would really be useful in this, but this is something, this slide I have borrowed from ICAI website itself. So ICAI website itself says that the environmental law opportunities with a chartered accountant can explore. And I was thrilled to see all these aspects where a chartered accountant's certificate, no objection certificate, there is in Gujarat because of the pollutions, there was a text, there was an environmental audit on annual basis, which was ordered by our High Court, which has to be complied by industries in a particular geographical area. So multiple things of that sort. Today, getting an environmental license, as I said, is so important, and there are chartered accountants who are now getting into that particular area, which I must say is a very niche area and a very critical. Every 2-3 years, this has to be renewed. So it is a recurring activity and a essential requirement for a business. There are various audits, compliances, consents are to be obtained. So these can definitely be an area which chartered accounts can look at. Again, here there is technical know-how which is required, which probably is not part of our curriculum, but definitely we can associate and collaborate with other experts or other technical professionals to provide services to our clients in this particular area. Now, this brings to our last category of the broad category of providing services. So if you remember, first is startups at the initial stage. Second was one-time registrations and licensing. Third was regular compliances, periodic compliance. And last is stakeholder services. So we at our firm have thought of businesses and the stakeholders as being categorized in these four. First is promoters, second employer, third consumer or debtors, fourth is vendor creditors, and fifth is financiers. Now, what are the services for promoters one can derive at? So once you decide the status in which an organization is to be formed, for example, there's a partnership which you suggest. Now the partnership deed needs to be drafted. Uh, I have seen hundreds of partnership deed in last so many years of my practice, but I am sorry to state that most of them were drafted by chartered accountants with a limited understanding of the requirements of the partnership deed, but only had the characteristics of or were drafted from the point of view of income tax provisions. Partnership deed today is a document which determines the rights and liabilities in a marriage. Today, partnership is a marriage. So this is a document which actually comes into play every time there is something which happens into a marriage. Let me give it an example. This one client of ours who came to us, he was having a very good profitable business, had no, he and they were two partners. One of them came to us saying that I need to file a case and dissolve this partnership and file a case against the partner. We inquired, since they were doing very well, we inquired what the reason is. They said our client said the reason is that there was a business opportunity. The economy was doing well, and in fact is doing well. He was of an impression that we should do investment in bit by bit and should mitigate our risks by not going whole hog, while his partner was of a view that we should make heavy investments, take heavy risks, and therefore there was a perception difference between the two partners where they had this partnership since last 30 years. Eventually, when we went to the partnership deed, there was nothing in it with respect to the rights and liabilities of partners as to how they would have to behave in these circumstances. In that view of the matter, what such documents like shareholder agreement or partnership deeds or trust deeds, today articles and memorandum are stereotypically drafted. But what they do is they actually provide the four corners within which and reading which the stakeholders know, the promoters know where do they stand, what is that they can expect from others, and what is expected out of them. So this would define many such things. So therefore, right from shareholders, partnerships, joint venture agreements. For example, here is where when we will come to later on tendering services, there are many times when when one has to bid, someone may have the technical qualification and may not have financial. The other one may have financial and not technical. So there are joint ventures which are limited to that particular project, which are entered into to meet the qualifying requirements of bidding a particular tender, where the joint venture or the SPV which is formed, the clauses thereof are so very important because so much is at stake, both reputation and money of the joint venture partners. So that again is a very important document, and tax is only one element of it. In fact, I would say it is only 10% element of it. 90% are the other civil rights, the duties, the risks which a document must cover like that. Now, second, stakeholders are promoters, are employees. Now, employees, we will come later as to today as we have seen earlier also, they are very small enterprises where the retention of employees are very difficult. Second, today everything is getting digital, and therefore the data theft is too prevalent. Just giving you an example out of our past experience. There's this client of ours who came to us uh, wanting to file a case against an employee of his yesterday than tomorrow. I mean, he was so urgent that he had to file it yesterday, not even today, not even tomorrow. That was his urgency. When we inquired, he said that this employee of his, he picked up uh, from as a fresher. That gentleman did not have a passport. It was our client who got everything done, exposed him to southeastern country geography, where my client had over last 10 years worked very hard to establish his particular product. He exposed him to that particular area. The details of customers, the clients, the knowledge was available, was given by my client to his employee. And recently he resigned, and the client came to know that he was joining a competitor. Now, it was so crucial for my client, because once he goes out with the data of the employees and other business relevant data, the product pricing, the customers, my client would have completely gone. In fact, he would have incurred a terrible loss. An entire effort of last 10 years would have completely gone waste. We took, when we inquired as to what are the evidences which my client says what he has done for him, and where's the evidence, documentary evidence or other evidences, there was none. In fact, there was no even appointment letter, which was the bare minimum which a businessman should have exchanged with his employee. It took us 3 months to develop evidences, do paperwork, before which we could have filed the case. And by 3 months is a long period in business. Things were against tracked against us. But just to give an example of this sort, where such expertise of CA, or a neck of CA in identifying such issues, providing a system, preparing do's and don'ts for their employees, preparing service level agreements. In fact, upon exit, properly drafting an exit agreement, so that there, if at all a non-compete is permissible, not permissible, what is the expertise which the outgoing employee is taking out, or what he, in comparison to what he brought once before he was in employment. All these aspects, a smart professional like a chartered accountant who runs and has a huge iteration also in his own firm, understands and brings to a small businessman like an MSME, who may not have that eye to look at. He will only employ a person based on his ability and what he perceives his contribution to his business would be. Next, obviously, is consumers and debtors. Now, the consumers, as we say, is the MIBA in every business. The services which, in my view, which can be provided by a chartered accountant starts at the very inception, from setting up systems and internal controls, from drafting. Okay, let me give an example. In any recovery matter, in any money suit, or a money recovery matter where sales purchases have been made, but they're outstanding, which are still payable by the customer, the principal document of purchase and sale is invoice. Multiple times we have come across invoices which lack the legal points which must be there for us to take a action in a swiftest way against against the customers to recover the dues. Something which we could have recovered in, let's say, 3 to 6 months would take easily 2 years because of bad drafting of a invoice, giving an opportunity to the customer or the debtor to raise frivolous issues which will drag the matter and probably would lose the interest of the judge as well as the plaintiff, the litigating party. For example, the client would say that he's not paid for last 2 years. There's no interest clause in the invoice. There's no jurisdictional clause in the invoice. There's no clause with respect to what happens of return of goods. When can it be done? What is the due date or the or due date of payment or the terms of payment? Multiple things. Their bill is raised by X, but the goods are delivered to Y. The invoice does not reflect that. It is delivery challan. At times, delivery challans are not available. So there are, right from the stage of actually drafting a proper purchase order to invoice to proper delivery challans and maintaining such documents. I think the role of chartered accountants is imperative. When we talk about customers, we also talk about the customers in sense of bidding for government contracts and tendering services, because these bidding, many in most of the infrastructure projects today, there is a bidding process. In fact, there's a bidding process even in today big private companies, whereby to identify and to get the best price, there is a bidding process which is to be followed. So the CA is pivotal to providing such services, whereby first his role comes, in my view, whenever you look at uh, a newspaper, there would be so many advertisements with respect to tenders, with respect to the requirements, and if your client, you are aware of your client being in a particular uh, he has a particular area of interest, you can have discovered such tenders and such contracts which your client would be interested in. So making your client aware is the beginning and starting point. Today everything is available on net, but an MSME who is good in his product, in his manufacturing, has a very good product, may not really be tech savvy or informed enough to look at all these contracts and tenders which are floating around. Second is that these big contracts or tenders run into hundreds of pages. So one will have to evaluate them. One will have to read and go through them, prepare and explain an MSME that what are the requirements, technical, other requirements, how a tax planning can be done, because today the price to a end customer uh, will vary with the tax planning, with tax, without tax, the sandwich available, the input credits which are available, so on and so forth. That is the tax planning. There are risk assessments, mitigation as to how much a particular tender requirement would be MSME be able to do it on his own, how much he will have to rely on other vendors to actually get the work done. How do you mitigate the risk? Thereafter, after all this, preparing proper documentation, there's a bidding which happens. The price has to be identified. For that, a good costing report has to be, a proper costing has to be determined. Again, something which a chartered accountant is very good at. there are various intangible expenditures which are not identified by the businessman, but will have to be considered in a long-term contracts and tenders. Obviously, if the client wants, he can be part of negotiating team. Okay, now seventh, monitoring is so very important. Today, most of the infrastructure, construction, and building related contracts are facing litigation. The major reason for this is that there is no proper monitoring done by the contractor at the end of the contractor, where the tender terms say something else. There are certain deadlines which are critical, certain deadlines which are non-critical also. Without identifying them and without monitoring what is to be done within a particular deadline, the contractor just goes ahead with the work without an eye on the timeline, without an eye on the cost. There are certain changes which are done. The scope of work is not properly understood. There are changes in the designs which are to be made which are made by the tendering authorities, uh, which can result into a change in scope, addition of work, extra item for which a process has to be followed in the tender documents. All these all these aspects of a tender has to be made to understand this MSME entrepreneur, and proper documentation will have to be done. Again, CA is inevitable in this particular field. Invoicing, as I said, timely invoice, timely inclusion of an item in an invoice, claim preparation with respect to extra work, uh, change of work, multiple such issues are there. And as today, with all these big contracts, no businessman, even companies big as L&T or big infrastructure companies cannot do the entire work on their own. They subcontract. So drafting of the subcontract by which you are careful enough to try to pass on as much risk for the which the main tender or the main contract has in a subcontract to the subcontractor with respect to the work done by the subcontractor. Because I mean, there are services like, for example, there's a big company which has bidded for 1,000 crores, but he gives smaller contracts of 20 crores to multiple contractors. Now, that contract of the tender for that 1,000 crores runs into 500 pages, while the subcontract is in 3 page or 2 page or 1 page work order. Now, how do you synchronize the risk and liability arising out of non-compliance of that 20 crores subcontract? So again, CS come very, very handy there. Okay. Before that, so again we come to vendor and creditor. Biggest issue in vendors are the scope of defining a proper scope of work, especially when it is provision of services. That is where the major issue lies. In the example which we just had, subcontracting, there is the subcontracting. The subcontractor will be a creditor of the main contract, and therefore rights and liabilities will have to be properly defined. Aging analysis of the credit of the debtors and creditors are so very important. The debt recovery is something which is today the most important factor where the businesses fail. The delay, the untimely action taken to get the monies out of the customers. These are all areas where the chartered accountant play the eye of the chartered accountant, and uh, their procedure, their accuracy of getting into the depth helps the MSME eventually. by him pointing out during his audits or special assignments. Now, finally comes financer. Now, this again, project financing is probably one of the very uh, niche traditional area along with tax and audit, which many practice. But in my view, the job does not end with a letter of intent, which is there. I had an example. A chartered accountant came with his client to me saying that he has numerous assets, but now he wants to start a business and take a loan. He's willing to mortgage a particular property and has many of them, but he has no proper documentation for that particular parcel of land which was to be mortgaged. Just setting that aspect right, proper documentation really took us 3 months for proper uh, document management to enable the chartered accountant to for the client to be able to procure a loan despite him having everything. Now, therefore, document management prior to loan is so very important. After letter of intent or LOI, which a bank gives, sanction letter, the conditions will have to be uh, complied with: mortgage deed drafting, licensing, or to say coordinating with the advocate giving the title, proper documents to be given to the advocate for the title, proper stamping. uh, Multiple issues come. In fact, today procuring a land is such an important aspect for setting up a manufacturing unit. We all know that. Uh, in fact, let me put it this way. Today I'm from Gujarat, and today the meteoric rise of Gujarat is thanks to one call or SMS of our then chief minister providing a parcel of land to then a nano project, which shifted from West Bengal to Sanand in Ahmedabad, Gujarat. And those who are in Ahmedabad would vouch for a fact that this one availability of parcel of land has entirely changed the geographical and the opportunities of that particular area in Ahmedabad, and has given so many employment and opportunities. So therefore, uh, a client who you are aware is wanting to get into some manufacturing area, you can probably identify clusters in which his particular business would fit. There are GIDCs, they are industrial development corporations, there are MADAs, there are MICD, there are GIDCs, where along with developed infrastructure, industrial plot is available. If a client wants to do a commercial business, the NA should be properly. It cannot happen that the land is agriculture and he is building an industry on that. The proper NA is to be obtained. These all aspects are finer aspects which, if a chartered accountant gets into, right from helping in procuring a land to getting ensuring that the land documents are proper for the beginning of the industry. For example, uh, there's so many instances. In fact, most of the time, the land for a company or for a business is actually in the name of the promoter. It is bought in the name of the promoter, and an entire industry is built upon it without that particular industry or that company having any right over the land. In fact, a basic rent or lease agreement is also not done. Though without that, you are not going to get various manufacturing licenses and permissions, but it is a very shadily done in the sense that proper documents are not done. So there is where the chartered accountant plays a role advising as to what should be the ideal position, whether the promoter should get a land in his name or it should be in the name of the organization doing the business. It's a huge parcel, whether it has to be divided, whether it has to be a short term or a long term lease. Multiple aspects will have to be seen. Then comes, obviously, after this land, there is documentation of land, mutation, getting the registration done is again a field where as such advocates are there, but it is not something which chartered accountants would be wary of. At least should have eye on it, and they can then take a help of their professional brother in form of lawyers to be able to do it. The question here is how much an MSME would rely upon a chartered accountant to get a correct advice. It's like a family doctor to whom you go and he says that this has to be done. I may not be able to do it. Let us go to an expert. Is how today a CA is to a MSME who does not have a full-time CFO, who does not have a full-time legal consultant with him. Next comes, okay, so there can be multiple scenarios where there is a business which grows, so there is a geographical expansion, or there is a product-wise expansion, the multiplicity product which has been added. So therefore, there is entire planning which goes with respect to that. Today, with the kind of acquisitions which are happening by venture capital fund and the equity funds which are available in the market, people have an eye on a good profitable business, even if it is small, which is where a chartered accountant plays a pivotal role, where identifying his client, preparing proper documentation, preparing him to be a attractive investee for prospective investments in his business or his business being taken over, or otherwise him wanting to expand, if not organically, by acquisition. So there is where a chartered accountant can provide a, a very important insight on the availability of such avenues to his client, and then help in the entire process of mergers and acquisitions. As we said initially, that how a while advising on the original status, suppose if there is a partnership which, or let us say if there's a proprietorship which was advised originally, or client has done it and has come to you. But now what happens is that a person has expired, the proprietor has expired. The licenses are generally in the name of proprietor. The PAN number is individually linked to a proprietor. Now, after the death of the proprietor, the business is good enough to be continued, but it is a hell for the legal heirs, be it wife or son, to actually get into transfer the documents or the licenses. Suppose there's a mineral right over a mine which is given by the government, or let's say GIDC gives leasehold properties which are in the name of that individual proprietors. When after that, what happens? So such are the multiple issues where the chartered accountant plays such an important role in succession and estate planning. So before such eventuality happens, if a smart chartered accountant, uh, aware chartered accountant, Santi, I'm sorry, understands the requirement of client and at the right time hints him to properly provide a succession, maybe from converting a partnership, a proprietorship to a partnership, from two partner partnership to a three partner partnership form, because the survival and the status is far easy to change during the during the life of a proprietor or a partner than after that. Again, the issue comes today, the part from where we come, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, there are businesses which are family owned, where the father started, and today there are two or more sons or son and daughter who are wanting to come into business. How, therefore, the entire succession takes place, the division of the properties, the family settlements which have to be prepared, the will has to be prepared, the proper identification of the strength of the next generation, and allocating businesses or areas of particular business according to the strength of the new generation, proper valuation, so that one may not perceive himself to be at a receiving end, uh, is so very important. And if it is done systematically, with proper valuation, with proper planning, then I think MSME is blessed to have a chartered accountant to his side who can advise him all that. I mean, the live example to us is such a brilliant entrepreneur, icon like Dhirubhai, who probably did not have a will, and we all have seen and known what happened to the succession fight between two brothers and what has eventually happened. Uh, I mean, again, the kind of planning, a document which was by way of a settlement between two brothers had certain clauses which ultimately one of the brothers took advantage of. Uh, Again, this is where a experienced and a smart chartered accountant can guide his client to have a proper, fair, transparent succession and estate plan. Now, in stock market, if it is as important to find a right entry price, it is also as important to find an exit price. Similarly, in businesses, it is not that a business is for perpetuity. You must know when to exit and what is the right valuation or what is your bandwidth to exit. Now, if you do not do that, you may have to face difficulty with respect to insolvency. Uh, uh, you can face dissolutions in frame of partnerships, so on and so forth. IPR and asset monetization is another aspect. If even if you want to continue a business, you can very well monetize one of your assets, or the or monetize the IPR. For example, you have a big brand, but you're not expanded. We know multiple local brands in our cities which are so good, but they have not expanded enough to actually maximize their IPR valuations, and accordingly it is so very important that a chartered accountant gives the right advice to them. Now, this is very important because this is a problem area, and every problem gives an opportunity. So these are the reasons why small scale industries then were closed. You see, financial problem tantamounts to 34%, which all your chartered account is so good at in arranging finance, in restructuring. We will see how law plays an important role in that. Then comes marketing problem, raw material procurement, disputes among owners, which we just stakeholders we took at. Natural calamities is again where you as a chartered accountant, every business today is or underinsured, whereby any calamity, maybe something like COVID, which hit all of us, they are whether there are climate changes which are happening. So a business can literally be ruined if, because of natural calamity, if proper uh, mitigation in terms of insurance policies are not taken. Labor problem iterations are another big issue out there. So let us see what are therefore the challenges and what are the roles of chartered accountants and government schemes and policies which are there. These are multiple. So according to me, what I have tried to identify is access to finance is one. Second is towards the left hand side, delay in payment, delayed payment, including in exports where your export is stuck for the payment and you are unable to pay to your vendors. Very big in infrastructure issue today is delayed payment by government bodies because no one wants to bell the cat. They want to go into arbitration, then go into appeals over that, and the matter gets prolonged, and the poor contractor suffers the interest cost and other variable cost. Uh, Inability to scale operations. A person having a precise and a beautiful product, but he does not have that market reach. He does not have that bandwidth. He does not have the human resource. He doesn't have the financial power to actually expand and scale his operations, where chartered accountants play such a vital role. They can strategize, develop, they can expand their market plan, find out uh, legal. There are multiple legal acts by which opportunities are created. In 91-92 privatization, there's a change in policy which completely opened the market for so many businesses. A right professional like a chartered accountant guiding their client to avail such change in policies or change in law is such a big point. For example, today or to say recently, there is a big shift in the policy where scrapping of vehicles are there, which gives such an opportunity. So identifying them is very important. Taxation challenges, obviously, where CAs are masters in advising income tax. Again, just since it uh, affects all of us, uh, going at the right time to a right forum, because if suppose an assessment order is high stake assessment order is there where uh, the pre-deposit is not possible, right time to go to knock the doors of high court, file a rate or otherwise is something which chartered accountant apart from his usual services will have to uh, bring to the table for an MSME. Uh, Again, lack of government awareness of the schemes where chartered accountants themselves are not aware. We will see later on how a chartered accountant can really uh, up his skill set and infrastructure to provide all these services. Then high compliance burden, various laws which you already seen. There's lot. The last column refers to what government is doing for that. So, like for example, there's technological obsolescence. Today, everyone is facing, including we as advocates and you as chartered accountants, MSMEs, are facing and are treading into an unknown future, which is riddled with AI. AI, how is it going to affect them, you, me? Is certainly going to affect. How is something which you are better placed to understand than that one entrepreneur who is fighting for his daily business, then actually strategizing and looking at the macro and world economy. Skilled labor. Okay, so for example, uh, when someone comes to us to file a case for recovery of the dues from from his customer, it is simpler for us to really go ahead and file a case for him. But whether that is an end in itself is something which we keep on asking ourselves. We therefore, what we do as not in all cases, obviously, but in relevant cases where the clients also agree, is to actually assess the customer or the debtor who against whom the case is to be filed as to why and what is the reason why he is unable to. Mostly, if you find that he has a intention to pay, but has probably a temporary financial weakness, or maybe his production is stuck because of lack of skilled laborers, rather than filing a case on him, if as a chartered accountant or as an advocate or as cumulatively we can provide a solution to the customer of our client against whom the litigation is to be done, to be able to come out of that financial stress with the condition that he will first pay our client, I think it will be a win-win situation for every one of us, and will see and reduce the litigation and the delay caused in recovering the money out of it, while boosting the confidence of the debtor in our client and our client in us. Uh, so next, okay. So there are again legal awareness and dispute resolution is an area where high cost of raw material is there. Business continuity and risk management is again a very important area where a multi specialist like a chartered accountant who has an experience in multi industries, multi sectors will be able to bring, and has an eye on the macro and micro economy, will be able to bring on table for the for his client who is an MSME. Next. Now, these are the skill sets and infrastructure required, because all of these will require skill sets and infrastructure of a chartered accountant, how he can acquire these resources. Uh, those who are attending this webinar are on that path of acquiring the skill set and skill sets to be able to provide legal insights and legal solutions to their clients or MSME. This one, I think we'll come with, I think we are running short of time. So let me skip very quickly all these aspects. Now, let me come to the nitty-gritties of some legal points which affect MSME. Now, legal forum available to MSME for recovery of monies are multifold. He can file a commercial suit, he can go in arbitration, he can refer in under the MSME Act, which will come to. He can file a petition in NCLT under IBC Act, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. He can file a regular or a summary suit. These are avenues which are available. Now, how a chartered accountant can play a role in such a scenario of ensuing litigation? A, he can be a conciliator or mediator between two parties. Many a times one understands that there can be a settlement reached, but for someone intervening in between two parties, because when two parties directly interact, there are issues of egos, there are misunderstandings which are crept in over the period, which are very difficult for them to independently resolve without assistance from someone like conciliator and mediator who tells uh, who tells who calls out a black sheep. Now so therefore there is where someone like you who understands both accounts and to some extent law is so very vital as conciliator and mediator. There's special courses which are offered by various institutes. Second is being an arbitrator. It is a very big practice area. In fact, it is something like to say that शेर ने अगर खून चख लिया तो फिर वो घास नहीं खाएगा. Once you enter into this domain as an arbitrator, you really would find everything else very, very disinteresting. But my experience and my professional advice to you all is that never enter into or never become an arbitrator for a dispute between two of your clients or for your client with a third party. The reason is that arbitrator per se has to be an independent and has to be fair. And as soon as you being fair and independent, you decide something which goes against one of your client or your client, the entire relationship becomes sour and decades of relationship goes south. This is a personal experience by which I am telling you. So what can be done is therefore that there are other friendly friend chartered accountants who have disputes among their clients where you can become arbitrator, and vice versa you can appoint a other independent chartered account who may be a friend of yours in an arbitration for your clients. Now, as a commercial arbitration or commercial dispute requires loads of documentation, including invoices, proving a material or a service being provided, proper invoicing as per the tenders, as per the contract done or not. So there are documentation compliances, document compilation which has to be done, where I think in a commercial dispute, chartered accountant plays a pivotal role. And he has to have a neck of understanding that what would form a proper evidence for a particular claim. Then obviously, he has to do. I'm sorry. Then he has to do a proper due diligence and forensic audit, which again is a very specialized field. But more than forensic audit again will cover legal aspects or must have some knowledge of law to be able to justify the same. Again, multiple times we have found that in a dispute relating to money, where calculation of interests, or for that matter, a quantification of a particular claim, or a figure, and the accounts related evidences have to be given, then chartered accountants are can become an expert witness. They can testify before the authorities, be it court or tribunals. And then most important is quantification of the claims and assessment of a claim given by the other side, because everything today, a claim will end up in something which is running in figures of money. So whenever a figure work comes in money, accounts are involved, calculations are involved, interest costs have to be thought over, uh, a proper backworking of expenses will have to be worked out to know the opportunity cost in terms of loss which is claimed. So for all these aspects, the chartered accountants are, in my view, most suited. Now, so as we understood that one of the areas of recovery is Micro, Small and Medium Development Act, under which a reference can be made by. So let us understand what it is. Today, we call it as MSME Act. So MSME Act, there is a Udyam portal which has been made, under which you can see the figures till 22, in fact, the registrations were only in micro, or in total micro, small, medium, were around 66 lakhs, which has jumped around 378%, and is latest figure till yesterday was 3 lakh 17,000, 3 crore 17,000, which is in fact huge. Now, Now, out of these registrations, if you see, trading holds 45%, there are 19% manufacturing and 36% services. Next. So trading, so now there is along with Udyam platform, where there's this website whereby you go submit documents, register yourself. There's many a time there are not sufficient documents by which you can actually register yourself as an MSME on Udyam portal. So there is this platform called Udyam Assist Platform UAP, which is formulated since 23 by government, and whereby even if someone can register, even if proper documentations are not there. This is because only upon such registrations you will be entitled to priority lending, which is today a very big push by the government to enhance the functionality on and the finance of MSMEs. Now, there are multiple benefits. There no collateral required, octroi benefit, waiver of stamp duty and registrations for an MSME. There are exemptions in direct tax laws. Today, the most important aspect everyone is aware about, that within 45 days. Next, there are multiple benefits which I am skipping through. So multiple details are required for registrations. It's very easy. There are portals today where you go, they give you a requirement, and accordingly you will have to furnish. Now, what is a micro, small, and medium? So as per the latest definition, if you have a turnover of less than 5 crores, but an investment which does not exceed 1 crore. So investment in plant and machinery less than 1 crore and turnover less than 5 crore, you will be a micro. If you go above it, that is 10 crores of plant and machine and 50 crores of turnover, you are a small. And the limit for medium is 50 crores and 250. 50 crores of plant investment, plant machinery, and 250 crores in turnover. So even if one criteria is breached, for example, today your plant and machinery investment continues to be less than 1 crore, but your turnover increases to 6 crore. From you below 5 crore, you are micro, but as soon as you reach the turnover of 5 crores, you come to small category, and so on and so forth. Now, there have been multiple disputes as to what will comprise in calculation of plant and machinery in terms of investment. There are multiple cases on that. I am right now, because of paucity of time, I'm not getting into it. But essentially what is not included is the IP of it, the non-liquid portion of the plant, the pollution equipments are not included as part of plant and machinery, and it has to be purchased within a particular period. The GST shall not be taken into account, or in fact shall be taken into account. Turnover calculation. Okay, so if you see that jump from, if you remember that jump from around 60 crores, 60 lakhs to approximately 3.5 crores, is because of this reason. Earlier, traders, wholesalers, and retailers were not allowed to register themselves in Udyam portal. But since 21, thanks to this circular, it is allowed. Essentially, it is allowed for them to be entitled for priority sector lending. And therefore, if you see the huge jump, and therefore, if you remember the slide showing 45% of trading activity forming part of the MSME registration on Udyam. Now, CA firm also can register themselves. Now, very important is uh, now what is said by section 15. I'll come directly to section 15 first. Section 15 says that every buyer will have to pay to a supplier within 45 days the amount or the price and the consideration for the purchase which he has made, where the supplier renders service or supplies goods before a particular date, he will have only 45 days of credit period to pay, which would mean that even if your terms of payment are, let us say, 90 days, the credit period in the industry is 120 days. But if the supplier is an MSME, mandatorily the purchaser or the buyer will have to pay him within 45 days, is what the mandate of section 15 is. So if you see here, what is material is where any supplier supplies goods to any buyer. So let us understand what a supplier and a buyer means. Now, a buyer is defined in section 2D of the Act, which means that whoever buys any goods or receives services from a supplier for consideration. Now, buyer can be anywhere. He can be outside India, he can be inside India. Still, the jurisdiction will be available to the extent if the supplier is within a jurisdiction of a particular authority of MSME Council. Now, supplier are divided into 4 categories, which is very material. So, supplier here are the first category is micro and small enterprise that have filed a memorandum under section 8(1) of the Act. So, if you remember, there were three categories: micro, small, and medium. But a supplier is only defined as micro and small. Medium is not included, which would mean that for section 15 to be applicable, a enterprise, if it is medium, it will not be covered. Only a micro and small will be covered. Then second and third is fine. Fourth is material. Any company, cooperative, so and so engaged in selling goods produced by micro and small enterprise and rendering services which are provided by such enterprise. Now, we are aware about these various cooperatives which are being formed, farmers cooperative or women's cooperative, where they procure material from small MSMEs and then they sell in bulk, or they procure and then go ahead and sell it. So there, when they sell it, their turnover may even exceed 250 crores or may exceed 50 crores, which would then make them medium and therefore not cover as a supplier. But this as a separate category is included as supplier, where it's a cooperative who has more than 50 crores turnover, but is formed to procure goods from micro and small, enabling a cooperative movement or a collective movement or a collective organization helping micro and small to actually spread their products and the wings and monetize properly. Therefore, even such cooperative and companies are part of supply, even if they fall in the category of medium enterprise. Now, there are multiple case laws. So, the biggest fight when any case comes to is whether a particular person is called supplier or not. To say that when he has to be seen whether he is small, medium, or micro on the date of getting an order, on the date of supplying material, or on the date on which a litigation happens, which is the date on which it has to be seen. There are multiple difference in opinion, but recently the Supreme Court has said that it is upon, it has to be seen in case of Sterlite. In case of Sterlite, even if Sterlite Power versus EPC solution, where EPC solution was a small and a micro when it received the order and when it complied with the order. But on the date on which it applied before the forum or got into the or filed a litigation, it was a medium enterprise. The Supreme Court stated that, or the Delhi High Court stated that you don't have to see on the date of entering into it or filing a dispute, but on the date before that. If you are a MSME, you will be covered by these provisions, since MSME Act is a beneficial legislation and has to be construed liberally. So the question comes, okay, so Section 15, as we said, determines the time within which 45 days within which the payment has to be made. Section 16 says that if you do not make the payment, then you will be entitled to, then the buyer will have to pay the supplier a compound interest on monthly rest. Please understand, as a chartered account, it's a compound interest with monthly rest at a 3 times of bank rate. So even if your invoice or your contract does not provide for interest, it's a statutory prescription of interest to be paid by a supplier, a buyer to the supplier. Now the question comes that, please keep this in mind, because we move to section. So the bank rate over the period have been, in last year it was 6.75. So you multiply by 3, you understand what around almost around 19-20%, 20-21% is the interest rate with which interest is to be paid. Okay, so if the amount is not paid, then under section 18, a reference will have to be made. A reference have to be made by the supplier to MSME Council against the buyer's default or non-payment, whereby the MSME Council, Facilitation Council, will provide something like a conciliatory mechanism. But if it fails, it under subsection 2, it will provide for alternative dispute resolution by making a reference to such institute or center for conducting arbitration under the Arbitration Act. So, statutorily, by reference, arbitration, provision of Arbitration Act are incorporated by section 18.2 and is made applicable to references made under section 18.2 of MSME Act. So all provisions of Arbitration Act will apply. The question is that Arbitration Act also has the provisions of interest, which says something else than section 16, which we just read, which will apply if an arbitration has happened without reference to section 18. So if there is no reference to section 18, but the supplier has been an MSME and he is directly gone in an arbitration not under MSME Act, whether can he still avail the interest provided under section 16? The Supreme Court said yes, since it is a benevolent provision. Section 15, 16, read with 17, does not contemplate that there has to be a compulsory reference under section 18. Section 18 reference is an option given to a supplier whether to go under this provision or to go in any other mode of recovery. But what is mandatory by statute is a liability of the buyer to pay interest to the supplier under section 16. So whether the Limitation Act applies, answer is because MSME Act does not talk about Limitation Act. The Supreme Court has recently stated that Limitation Act will apply to MSME Act. The question is that if there's an arbitration filed, suppose if the buyer has a counter claim against the supplier because of shortage or because of inferior quality, can he file a counter claim? Supreme Court has answered in affirmative that yes, a counter claim, even under reference in 18, will lie against a supplier by a buyer. But if there an independent action or independent claim of the purchaser or the buyer against the supplier will not lie. If supplier has claimed against buyer, buyer can have a counter claim, but it cannot be vice versa, in the sense that independent claim of the buyer is not uh, not adjudicatable under section 18 of MSME Act. Now, very important and rigorous is section 19. If there is a decree in favor of the supplier, there is no way an appeal can be filed without 75% of the pre-deposit. The appeal shall be under the section 34 of Arbitration Act, and the mandatory provision of section 19 will be applicable and override the provision of 34 if it is pursuant to reference under section 18. There are various judgments with respect to that. Now, very important is that interest paid here under this act is not deductible from income. So therefore, it is a double whammy to the buyer who does not pay and has to eventually pay interest. And all these provisions override other acts which are inconsistent. Now, if you remember, we have considered MSME recovery mechanism to an MSME available under MSME Act. He has second available recourse, which is under IBC, where he can file section 7 or section 9 petition, which is as an operating creditor. I think we are running short, but I can quickly say that this can only be done if the debt to be recovered by the MSME is above 1 crore. He will have to give notice under section 8, then on its default file a petition under section 9, which will be admitted under section 14. Please understand that this is not a recovery mechanism. This is a mechanism by which the corporate debtor is given time or is given an opportunity to rearrange its affairs by taking out the old management, which is presumed to be inefficient in running the company and paying the debts of its creditors, and therefore it is replaced by an RP or an IRP, and thereafter by RP, who runs the company for the period during CIP process, eventually liquidates the assets, and thereafter from the liquidated amount, it pays off the creditors of the company. This is how eventually there may be some amount which is recovered by a MSME for his debt against the corporate debtor. Now, now section 94, where individual insolvency is also there, where a proprietorship. So, okay. So this section, this entire section 9 is against corporate debtors. If it is not a corporate debtor and if something has to be recovered, then there is section 95, 96, which has to be 95 essentially, where a debtor can himself go and say that I'm unable to pay, I require time, this is my way to pay out the dues, and which under section 94 will be considered. There's the entire process which we do not have time to go through. Now, most important and the biggest practice area, I would believe in future, at least in next 5-7 years, is pre-packaged insolvency process, again in IBC code. Since this is only meant for MSME, this is not applicable to anyone who is not an MSME. So the starting point obviously is the registration on the MSME portal, and therefore also you see why there is such a big rise in the registrations of this. So the minimum default which must be there is 10 lakh rupees, which is a very low benchmark to be able to be eligible for a corporate data to come under this MSME. So in contrast to uh, what we just heard in section 9, is there here the corporate debtor himself can come and with a plan, in gaining a confidence of the financial creditors, to say that here are my asset, here is what I can bring on table, this is the time or time in which I can pay, this is the amount of haircut which I require, and this is my business plan henceforth. So once he comes, that what happens today is, if we all as a chartered account know that there is one time settlement which banks offers, but this is subject to a higher management approving and a big uh, vigilance, uh, hanging sword on the officers. Here is a statutory procedure which is to be decided by an independent authority, adjudicating authority called NCLT, who sees the plan, who sees the process, who oversees everything, and therefore no one can pinpoint a finger on a banker who is taking that haircut. So it's a win-win situation. I believe it should be taken very seriously by institute in sense in educating and promoting it among the chartered accounts, who then can really promote it among MSMEs, those who are facing financial crunch and has a chance of revival. So as a chartered accountant, obviously for giving all these services, Contract Act, the provisions are must when a contract is void. What are the provisions of damages? I would just highlight section 59 and 60, which today, irrespective of what you do as an auditor, auditing accounts, any amount received by creditor, there are two options. One is that if the creditor says that I'm paying this amount towards the principal, it will be adjusted to, I'm sorry, by a debtor to a creditor. So if a debtor pays an amount and he says that it has to be adjusted towards the principal, it will have to be adjusted accordingly. But if he does not say while making a payment, it is the will of will and practice of the creditor how he allocates the money received towards interest or towards the principal, and accordingly he can account it and claim the balance amount. Now one of the big, so we have understood how MSME can recover, but what happens if it defaults in paying its bank loans or the finances which it has taken? RDB Act is a very important, the recovery of debt due to banks and financial institutions. The name suggests that this is only for the non-payment of debt, uh, debt by an MSME to banks or financial institutions. So again, notices have to be given. Adjudication has to be done by not by a civil court but by a specialized court called DRT. Pre-deposits have to be done. Again, just like MSME pre-packed, in 2002, a SURFACE Act came into play, which gave right to banks or secured creditors to recover their amount without following the due course provided in law and going to the court at that relevant time. So under Securitization Act, under section 13, for a default, a notice will have to be given. The secured asset then could be taken possession of. It could be taken possession of or could be managed, or someone else can be appointed to manage that particular asset, uh, or any other thing. The buyer can object initially symbolic position is taken over, then physical position is taken over, which can be appealed against their magistrate permissions which are required for taking possession, so on and so forth. Appeals are provided in DRT against any such action by bank and financial institutions. Is again some knowledge which is required for anyone who's doing project finance. It is an add-on service in unfortunate circumstances if your client is unable to pay the finance which it has taken from banks and financial institutions. A big practice area, according to me, which is unexplored, is the factoring regulations 2011. Now, and it is very vital for MSME. Now, if you see, if you remember that today, though the period is 45 days for an MSME to receive money statutorily by any of its buyers, because of the liquidity crunch or working capital crunch, an MSME today wants to recover money in, let's say, 5-10 days, or let's say immediately upon supply of goods and acceptance of it by its buyer. There was no regulatory framework. There were sarafs where the bill discountings would take place, or there were bank facilities where such aspects were done. But it was too cumbersome for a small MSME to go ahead and do it. Therefore, this particular act in 2011 providing for factoring regulators and companies providing factoring services were introduced for MSME with uh, special uh, special pointing out or special provision to ensure that a MSME can assign its right under section 15 to 17 to such a factoring agency. To say the least, that today I am entitled to receive in 45 days. If not, then they have to pay interest under section 16 within 2 days of my bill being approved by the buyer. On receipt of the goods, I can go to a factoring agent. He can today discount that. The advantage available to such factoring agent is that within 45 days, if the if the buyer is not paying, he can take the same action which an MSME could have taken under section 18, or go in arbitration, or go to the court and recover the same amount of interest under section 16 which an MSME could have done. So he in fact steps into the shoes of the MSME who has discounted that particular bill with him. There's a multiple agents, there's a multiple layering which can be done, but just to briefly explain the big advantage of such financing opportunity being made available to MSMEs and even companies and financing companies, fintechs today going ahead and becoming such factoring agents. Though there's a permission which is required, not everyone can do it. Okay, so this is now how I wish to sort of conclude by doing independently. Today, it has been almost 23 years since I left the practice as a chartered accountant. And therefore, as an outsider, or as an from outside, not an outsider, but from outside, how do I look as a SWOT analysis of a chartered accountant qua the MSMEs? The strengths definitely is expertise in financial management, the compliance knowledge which you all have, the strategic advisory skills which you gain because of dealing with multiple clients in multiple industries, in multiple vocations, in multiple professions, and multiple geographies. So that strategic advisory is there. You have definitely today, thanks to the institute with such programs, there are wide professional networks. You can really call anyone or take help. And also there is a lot of professional respect which is attached to a chartered accountant when it comes to banks, financial institutions. There's a value to a signature of a chartered accountant in regulatory authorities, for providing loans, restructuring. Okay. So again, you are the people who can bring those digital tools in terms of ERP situations, audit softwares, data analytic tools, which probably you get for a multiple MSMEs rather than a single MSME who cannot afford it. So you can today group various MSMEs, subscribe to a tool and help them with such advanced tools. Again, legal expertise. Obviously, you may not be lawyers, you may not have complete legal knowledge, but you have far better operative knowledge than that entrepreneur who is only knowing how to run his business without having any understanding about the legal compliances and legal nuances, which you will have a neck to understand and advise him whom to go. So these are your strengths. Now weaknesses, again, by numerical, I have had 6 strengths and 5 weaknesses, but I believe they are major ones. One is limited specialization in MSME needs. Today, such pathshalas are so important to make you aware about the needs of MSME, to to really let the chartered accountants know the entire world of opportunities which are available to for an MSME and what they require, which in my view, small firms of chartered accountants really lack that expertise, especially in export import compliances, government schemes, subsidy framework. How many of us really know about it? Then there are technological gaps, which is something, in fact, I was to devote at least 10 minutes to it, but for the time, is the advent of AI driven businesses, AI driven processes, AI driven services. It's a big, we as a chartered accountant are very inept to use these tools of AI, blockchain technologies, and also obviously MSMEs increasingly require it. Neither they know of it, neither we are able to advise to. Then awareness of government scheme, resource constraint and high initial investments are required to get these tools, to get that skill set of employing multiple specialist people in your firm to be able to provide services to MSME. Then high dependence on the traditional service. We all are happy in the routine work and outcome what we get from the traditional services. Opportunities. Oh, in fact, how many? Okay, there are 11 opportunities according to me. It's how you all take it. Obviously, financial literacy and advisory, whereby cash management, loan restructuring. In fact, restructuring, sir, today is one of the biggest requirement, because a initial promoter actually ends up paying far higher rate of interest because he has no history no history of performance to show to. But as he gains, there is a turnover, there is a restructuring which is required, which in his normal business routine he just forgets. It's a chartered accountant to point out. Taxation and compliance support, export import assistance. Today, our GDP can, it's not only the, if you see all if you look it from macroeconomics, India cannot only grow with the consumption story. It has to be export oriented thrust, with the government and the businessmen and professionals like us will have to give. So it is import export assistance which we can give. And if you remember, the GDP contribution of MSME is only around 30%, but the export is around 47%. So the ample, because see, a small business can actually run faster or can change faster, adapt faster. So he can really provide a customized solution or a product to a business requirement than a big industry who will have to do huge, massive change in its entire setup, infrastructure, machinery to build a customized product. So that's an advantage. But again, the market reach is not there where we will have to play an important. Delayed payment resolutions is an opportunity, a business, a professional opportunity. Government scheme leverage, we have already talked about. Uh, Infrastructure development assistance, again, green business initiative, energy audits, scaling operation using zero certificates, which I'm sure in some of your seminars it has been ever to. It is somewhere zero defect certificates are required to be given, and if that is given, then there are certain incentives which are provided, and for exports it is considered as a very good where a price can be negotiated if there is a zero defect certificate offered. Then cluster development programs. Government comes, every budget has one such project where a cluster or an area or a particular sector has an emphasis and given. Few years back, it was warehousing. Uh, there, uh, there was solar around couple of years back. There were such sectors which has to be identified. You will have to first identify those sectors, understand which clients are willing and are able to make best use of such sectors, and then bridge that gap and bring them to where the pudding lies. Then again, ECG reporting, technological transformation is such a huge and massive opportunity where both for CA firms internally and for MSMEs. Dispute resolutions for export and imports, construction infrastructure sector. So today, construction infrastructure sector itself has a spend of more than 7 to 8 lakh crores. The last budget had 10 lakh crores of estimated expenditure. So you can just imagine the kind of opportunities available in that sector. Now, threats, which have to be carefully understood. So it's not only chartered accountants. There are multiple. Chartered accountants, I don't want. In fact, unfortunately, is being chartered accountants are limited to as a CFO or as in their traditional practice. The entire pudding or the cream on the pudding is actually taken by other professionals like MBAs, like like many other specialized financial course professionals. So you have a major competition from non-traditional players, and with an advent of AI, even a non-chartered accountant can provide today a basic chartered accountant services at a throwaway rate using AI. It's I mean it's we can be ostrich by closing our eyes, but this is a future which is certainly right there. It's the question about the timing, how many months, weeks, or years you have. Each one of us may have a different perspective on the time, but the reality is that that's happening. Regulatory changes and ambiguity. So the law is changing, and the schemes, the notifications, the ordinances, the law is changing so quickly that for an individual practitioner as a chartered accountant, it's very difficult to get used to it. Earlier, when VAT, so you survey, so entire GST today is in during the time of excise and custom. The Act of Excise and Customs, the Excise Act was of very few sections. It was mainly governed by circulars and notifications. This is the same thing which is now going ahead in GST, where with every new day we are finding circulars and notifications, and to be aware of all those and be able to give right advice to the client is again a threat uh, which has to be mitigated. Again, MSME skepticism today. you are willing to provide and upgrade yourself to provide the services to MSME. But whether the MSME have that bent of mind and are willing to pay for the professional services, uh, it is a chicken and egg situation. So only if they are willing to pay and hire you, you are willing to upgrade your services to be able to provide them. And only if you are able to provide such services and make them aware about that, would MSME come forward and break that uh, barrier to come forward and avail your services. So what will happen? In my view, today finance providing fees for your services is definitely a big barrier for MSME to go ahead and procure professional services. Trust is not an issue at all with CA fraternity. So therefore, how do you breach that? One way to do it is that uh, again, institute will have to look at it. But if someone, this is what is happening with startups, they do not have funds right now, they have valuations. You know that in future they will be profitable, in future they will have money to pay you, in future they will have valuations out of which they will sell a certain, liquidate their shares and pay you off. But what happens till then? Institute will have to come out with uh, some working way out, whereby maybe your chartered accountants are permitted to take some shares, a share or equity in such startups or in such MSMEs, and provide services against that, and take that risk along with that entrepreneur for a future realization of such equity shares or whatever it is. I don't really know whether C Institute provides that. In my old days, it was not so provided. I hope it has changed, and if it has not, it is time to change. Then economic downturns. Earlier, the cycles were of 5, 7, 10 years. Today, the cycle is changing every 3 months with the geo-global scenarios with war and disasters happening everywhere. The economic situations are fast undergoing a change without uh, anyone, being chartered accountants or the MSMEs, anticipating it. Globalization challenges, obviously, there are as much there are as much imported material ready to be imported, as much and much less which are to be exported. China, being the factory of the world today, is providing at such a cheap rate everything and in such a bulk quantity which we are unable to match. The question is anti-dumping, a professional chartered accountant providing the cost-effective solution to his client MSME to reduce his cost, to be able to adopt technology for a quick, efficient, and if and uh, uh, effective way of delivering the product and services of the client. Uh, Again, lastly and not the least, is in this digital age, data security concerns, data of a client with you today, whether it's being misused in your office or gets leaked or gets copied, both is a threat to you as well as the client. So data breaches, example which I told you, data theft, is something which happened in 2006. It's much more happening now. So these are the threats which I understand. How do you leverage these strengths and opportunities by mitigating weaknesses? Skill enhancement, infrastructure investments, sector specific focus. Not everyone can do everything, but some can do some with expertise. That is what is required. A focus is required where experts, domain experts are there, and then there's networking among such domain experts. So specific Sector specific focus has to be there. Awareness campaign amongst MSME is there today. Institute is doing a great work by such programs to provide awareness among chartered accountants about the opportunities which MSME sector has for chartered accountants, the services which can give. It has to be vice versa also. MSME has to be sent to be told today that there is a whole bunch of services, expert services at an effective cost, which can be provided, which will give much reward than the expense which an MSME will have to bear to. It's bridging that gap of expectation, knowledge, information, which institute will have to do, and each chartered accountant will have to take on its head to educate his own client. Then I will come to 5 collaborative initiative as last, but AI adoption training has to be done. The legal representations and advisory services will have to be upgraded for the chartered accountants by engaging into such seminars. Now, the most important aspect. Again, Mr. Jain can state, but again, in our old good days when in late 90s and early 20s, there was no collaboration or no official partnership which could be permitted between chartered accountant and any other profession. Now, I'm sorry to say, but today the need of the hour, the requirement of MSME sector, the need of our economy is not of individual practice area. Today, the solutions, the commercial economic solutions which are required does not require only one domain expertise. It is multi-domain expertise which is required, and it is not within humanly possible for an individual human, however great and intelligent and educated he may be able to provide the entire solution to a client, and therefore multi-domain is required. Collaboration is a very networking and collaboration is a word which is not really understood in a correct perspective, is not taken in the correct perspective. You have big firms. I mean, today on this forum, the big firms are there who have professionals from for various fields who provide such services to the client, and therefore client evaluate their service, and they're rightly doing. I have nothing to say against that, but all I was saying is that it should be made freely available, or there should be no bar on smaller firms to be able to do the same, which otherwise the bigger firms are doing. So therefore, to begin with, you have to collaborate, you have to find the right skill sets, people who are there and probably have a bigger heart while doing the same. This is how I would say that these today the world of chartered accountant is quickly changing. I can only say this much, that it is the network which will lead to net worth. Increase in network will increase in net worth of a chartered accountant. So this has to be seen now. There are, as I say, that there are various resource material websites which a CA providing service to MSME should be aware about. One is obviously this MSME government website. One must always go through this annual report of MSME, from which I borrowed multiple data figures. Then there is this NIMSEC website is there. CAConnect.coorg. CA Connect itself provides a valuable insight on the domain expertise of a chartered accountant available. I don't know how far and how much one lists in that particular space, and how much it is utilized by other professional brothers, and how far this is helping. Now, for CA, two things I must advise if he wants to go ahead with MSME. he should be very conversant with MSME website, and second is he must understand this MSME Sarthi, which is a one-stop solution for him to be able to understand and provide services, at least with respect to Udgam port, to to the registration aspect of MSME and various other schemes available, where you generate the list, get details, get the schemes, multiple schemes. So I have, as part of my legal uh, uh, transmission of knowledge, uh, I have not covered the government schemes which are there for MSC sector, because this is for some other day. But MSME Sarthi is where you go. It is very simple in 3-4 steps. It will tell you for your business requirement, for your geographical area, what are the schemes, government beneficial schemes and subsidies which you can avail of, and how you can avail. The next website is National Single Window System, which is nsws.gov.in, is another website which is thanks to Modi ji's ease of doing business, whereby it is claimed that all approvals required to start your business in India will be given from this one window. So the central government itself lists that there are, can you imagine, there are around 659 central approvals which are required, and around 6436 state approvals which are required to do business in India. Now, if this is the amount, obviously not all these are required for everyone to start the business. Many would have some would have others. So, but just to have a number which is given by the government itself, the number of approvals which are required, which is precisely why, despite a growing economy, we are so far back in east to do business. And though the red tapeism has reduced, but today, today what is required is that a chartered accountant has to lead. Lead would mean learn, engage, adapt, and deliver himself to drive an MSME. By drive, I would mean develop, reinvent, integrate, value add, and empower an MSME. This, if it is done, then I can only say is this that I just get reminded of Mr. Abdul Kalam's famous quote that excellence is a continuous process and not an accident. So therefore, chartered accountants will have to lead by example, by adapting themselves, educating themselves. They are the architects of MSME resilience. CS will have to drive change in the MSME sector by not keeping up with the pace, but by setting the pace for the MSMEs. By enhancing innovations and collaborations, we can transform challenges to opportunities. As John Maxwell, the famous British thinker, said that a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. Let us contribute towards MSME's brighter, substantial future, as it's only this progress and prosperity and only their achievement which can achieve our collective dream of making our country a developed nation in the nearest future, which I am sure it would happen in our lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
It's very wonderful and enlightening session. You have addressed almost all the topics, all the aspects of MSME, which you could cover in this very short time period. I know MSME is a very big topic nowadays and requires a lot of information and time to discuss everything. But really appreciate that you have discussed almost everything in this given time span. Um, I understand that there's a huge scope for CAs in MSME. Having said that, there are some queries of the people. If you allow, can I ask you
Please,
one by one?
please. Yes, this is the session for which I have taken it, so
Okay.
that it is an educating for me also.
Okay. So first question is, how can MSMEs ensure compliance with labor laws and avoid related legal penalties?
Right. So today, how it is that see, if you remember MSME, if that categorization which I've shown, there are various MSMEs which are having less than 5 lakhs of investment. In fact, major micro are falling in that category. So many labor law compliances are not applicable to you if the threshold of the employee requirement is not breached. Second is this, that today what is happening is there are, if I can say a practical solution, there are various softwares which are available which maintain the records of the labor law compliance and help the MSME to actually comply with various labor laws, because it is today labor in our profession, in law also, labor law is a separate legal field altogether. Someone who practices in that can have a lifetime of practice only in it. So uh, there are softwares available, there are experts who are available, who come to your office or who maintain your books and does regular compliances. But to answer your question directly, is there any other way out? Answer is no, except for complying. Question is, therefore, how do you comply? By digitally utilizing the available softwares and getting the right person advising you and complying with you. If you can't afford someone who is regularly complying with it, there are various CA firms at lawyer firms who provided labor law compliance services.
Sir, next question is, what legal recourse is available to MSME in case of loan defaulters or insolvency?
So is the question that MSME is a defaulter or his buyer is a defaulter?
You can answer either ways.
So I actually covered in my presentation both. If an MSME himself is a defaulter, right? I believe today the only person who can save an MSME from getting into that zone of default is actually his own auditor, a chartered accountant who regularly, annually, or biannual or 6 monthly goes through his books, sees his finance, and gets into a distress. Whenever I speak to my chartered accountant friends, I tell them that it should be mandatorily made to your client that at least once in a year, possibly twice, at least once in a year, they should meet you for a particular period whereby you understand their business requirements, their status, their present situation, and you make them aware about any solutions which you can offer or the change in law. So therefore, if it is caught at the early stage, probably you can plan it better by two means. One is, there are in fact three modes available. One is that under section 10 of IBC, if you are corporate debt, if you are a company, you can yourself go under insolvency, right? If you are an MSME, if you are an MSME can also go under section 10 of IBC. An MSME can also, only an MSME can also go in this packaged process, which is only for MSME, whereby again, by law or by statute, a certain majority can force a haircut on the other minority creditors, and therefore bring the debt of or the default of the MSME a payable extent or to a serviceable extent. This is the second available. Third available is obviously also in that sense, there is arrangement in old section 391, 392, merger, amalgamation and arrangement in Companies Act, which is today 232 in the 2013 Companies Act, whereby an arrangement can be made with the creditors, whereby 75% of the creditors agree, and then therefore it will bind upon the 25% balance, and the scheme can be thereafter approved in NCLT. So this is the third way of doing it. Now the fourth way obviously is that uh, what we face is that if there's an early detection, it's like a cancer. Early you detect, you can come out of it, right? So if you detect it early, then with the consent and transparency of the lenders or the creditors, you can actually shelve out a part of your asset or part of your business or part of your IPR, monetize the assets, pay off the debt, or in fact, if nothing is available, you can exit the business by handing over a running and a profitable going concern to someone who can actually give you value for this going concern. Sir, it is an experience of last so many years that it's only a running horse which will fetch value. A dead horse does not fetch value. It is just in say that a dead elephant will also have its own value, but that is far lesser than a running horse, which is a going concern. Now, this is where MSME is in default. Now, if MSME has to recover, the best way to recover money for an MSME is to go in under the MSME Act 2006, file, make a reference under section 18 if not paid, go into arbitration to recover the money. This is the fastest and the quickest way to do it. But with a caution that if the other person, if his debtor does not have money to pay, then this will be an exercise in futility. And in fact, if it is a temporary setback to his debtor, as I told, the CAs and the professionals can be used to overcome such temporary difficulty of the debtor, which then can be a win-win situation for everyone.
Great, sir. So we have next question is, what is the role of a CA in GST compliance of MSME?
Okay. So there is no difference, sir. There is no difference except for certain segment of MSME till up till a particular amount of, I believe, 50 lakhs. An MSME will has an option to go under GST or to go on to not go and go in the composite scheme or not be covered by GST at all. But his compliance in GST is no different than a compliance to a non-MSME.
Correct. So I think the next question is saying, what are the remedies available under the labor law for the business? I think we have already answered this in the first question. So next question is, how can CAs contribute to financial and legal awareness of business owners?
In fact, that is something which you guys should be telling lawyers like us because you have been doing it day in, day out. But I would say that so I say this. See, let me put it this way. So as an advocate, who is a chartered accountant, what makes me stand out to my counterpart, who is another advocate, having the same experience, everything same, is my actual actual experience which I gained while doing audit. When I did audit, which I did very sincerely in my articleship, and post that obviously when I was practicing as a chartered accountant, where I got that in-depth knowledge of how a business runs. How and what is the mindset of a businessman? What are the procedures of a business? Why a businessman takes a particular decision the way he has taken. Today in PMLA cases which we handle, the biggest advantage which we have today is because of our understanding. Though as a lawyer we fight that case, but because that chartered accountant mindset with which why I understand why a particular entry is passed the way it is passed, why an accounting is not done or done in a particular manner. So this understanding stands out, and with this understanding and knowledge about your client, while hand holding him, it is very important that the communication channel should be open. Once the communication channel is open, as they say, you don't change your family lawyer and CA for your life, and which is true. And unfortunately, that's not true for a lawyer. So once you are aware and you yourself have that or do that effort to understand what your client is going through, I think it is very simple for you to provide a solution to him. Even if you are not into a project consultancy, you can have friends who are into it, you can have other partners who are into it, and doing that. Many a times a wealthy man also has liquidity crunch. A wealthy man has problem of distributing his assets among his sons. So this is where the knowledge of law, the valuation aspect, the structuring of the entire thing really comes into play. The understanding of the government policies, the RBI stipulation, when a repo rate is reduced or increased, when the market will have a higher interest rate or lower interest rate. This macro understanding of your along combined with your personal understanding of that individual client, a combination of that is lethal and is unparalleled to any other profession. Where is where you can provide services, financial services, which will be valued by a client as well.
Agreed. Totally agreed, sir. I think the next question, you are the perfect person as you are a combo of a CA and a legal fraternity. Next question we have is, how can CAs collaborate with legal professionals to provide comprehensive support to business?
Yeah. So let me say two things which are common among the uh, code of ethics of chartered accountant and our bar council rule is A, that we cannot share our fees. B, unless the CA Institute has changed, I really do not know. I'm talking about 20 years back, 25 years back. Second is that both of us cannot advertise.
Correct. Same for today, sir.
Right. So with these two common things, fortunately, unfortunately, today a commercial dispute requires a commercial legal solution. It is not purely legal, it is not purely commercial. Right? A money which has to be recovered from a debtor, right? You cannot today go ahead and tell them that this is my financial statement, this is my interest calculation, please give the money. You will not. You will have to fight a case. You will have to file a case. While filing the case also, I cannot say that since I have now filed the case, forget everything, we'll see, it has to be taken to a logical end, and we'll see the light at the end of the tunnel to say that the litigation. That does not happen, unfortunately, in our litigation system, the way in which we are. I have no hassles in accepting that unfortunate fact. So what is required is that in my last so many years of experience, the litigation is filed to bring the other side on table.
Correct.
Once that is done, it is the CA or a financial advisor to the client who actually advises him correctly that, sir, what is the right, whether it is the right thing to settle, it is always right thing to settle. But at what quantum, what amount, what should be the terms, what would be the impact, what is the financial position of the other side. As an advocate, we would not know that. A chartered accountant looking at the balance sheet of the other side, which is a public document, if it is a company, right, can really tell and advise the litigating client to say that boss, अभी जो मिल रहा है ले लो, 5 साल बाद वो भी नहीं मिले. I'm sure you are going to win the case, but the case is not fought for winning. The case is fought for recovery of the money, right? So there is where both will have to come together. The question is today, as I always say, that my work starts where a CA's work ends.
Correct.
Right. So we are both complementary and supplementary to each other's profession. As much as you can do, you will have to, as I gave the example of a family doctor, he diagnoses it, but also takes a second opinion if required. And if he diagnoses it and something which requires an expertise, he'll refer to that doctor. Somehow, unfortunately, that is lacking, which is something which your and both lawyers and CAs must learn from medical fraternity. The amount and quantum of reference and the specialization which they do. Today, let me put it this way: if you go to a doctor, you will see that you have to pass through multiple layers of documentation before you actually see the right doctor, who may only see you for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. 10 minutes to bahut ho gaya, right? Same is not the case with a chartered accountant or an advocate, because today that collaboration, that big heartedness, that everything is not there. So to speak to you legally today, there is no way we both can on paper work together. It is only by reference, collaboration, finding the right mindset, finding the right expert for the right requirement of the client, that it is there in many cases. So in example which I told you, if a client comes to us to defend, he has to pay money to the bank or to say some other creditor, right? He says that, sir, mujhe aap, I mean, if he has taken the money, let's say if he has taken a crore rupees, today I cannot go to the court and say that the color of the money was defective, or the money was torn and therefore there is a quality defect, or instead of 1 crore I received 99 lakhs. That's not a defense I can raise. So the only defense is where I can give him is extension of time within which he will have to either get insolvent or repay the amount or settle the amount. So how do we settle? I am no expert in finance. So I will then probably, if he has his own set of professionals with whom we can go, or if he ask me, I have, there are multiple chartered accountant firms whom I am aware about. I recommend them that please go. Maybe he's in this kind of situation, or is this kind of banker, or this kind of geography. He probably, these 2-3 firms can help you out. This is how it happens. And eventually what happens is that I give him a period of 1.5 years of life, legally speaking. And within that time, he is able to bring in the funds to settle the amount.
Sir, I think questions I have ended up, but I have one personal question that not as CA, but as a layman. Many MSMEs who are very small in their business, say 1 CR they are having 1 CR turnover or 5 CR turnover, they hesitate to go to court for filing suits. Reason being, it's very time consuming and a very cost and energy consuming process. So they hesitate to take these matters to courts or district courts or to upper forums. Is there any recourse which MSME can take to have their issues settled?
Yes. So, first of all, I beg to differ from you. A CA is never a layman.
No, I'm talking about as an MSME.
I understand that. So, to answer your query, sir, you are right. What happens is that I'm talking about. I mean, probably the audience is from Pan India. there is something like a court fee which has to be paid while or before you file a particular case in civil court. So that in Gujarat, it is very less. But in states like Andhra Pradesh, in Tamil Nadu, and various other, it runs as a percentage of the claim. So if it is 5-7%, if it is around a crore of rupees, and 5% is the stamp, is the court fees, so 5 lakhs he has to spend. So you are actually investing good money after bad money, behind bad money, right? So that is the mindset of the entrepreneur. But he fails to understand one thing, that if the other person in India, or it's a human mindset that till the other person is forced to do something, he will not do. So as I told, litigation is something to bring the other side on table. That is one. Second, to say what forums. Today there are commercial contracts which have arbitration clauses. Now, arbitration clauses in arbitration law post amendment of 2015 and 19 today have to be finished in period of 18 months max. At max, it runs to 24 months with extensions. So earlier understanding of it running in 5-10 years is now reduced to 18 to 24 months. Now, the problem with arbitration is that they are costlier. So the cost effective solutions are commercial. So any commercial dispute, which commercial dispute would mean that which is with respect to money claims. There are commercial courts which are set up where any amount of dispute over 10 lakhs can go to commercial courts, whereby the lengthy procedure which was earlier available under CPC has been reduced to a very great extent. And ideally, the law provides that it has to be within 24 months, but it does not happen. But yes, instead of 5-7 years, it gets over in around 36 months, which and at a very, very low cost, because it's at a very, very decent cost compared to arbitration. And lastly, for MSME, there is no law in entire world which is better than MSME Act 2006, whereby the time period is assured, the cost is very less, and you are going to get a return of thrice the bank rate, statutorily speaking. So that is the best remedy available today. Unfortunately, the system is clogged, and therefore there are delays therein also, but things are improving.
Very well answered, sir. Thank you so much. You're truly a knowledge house of information, having vast knowledge of different areas. I really appreciate that you took time for this webinar and enlightened us in various areas of CA profession where we can grow and nurture ourselves and has future more opportunities for CAs, or I can say the CAs which are now qualifying, they have wider scope in their careers. So really grateful, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for this session. Over to Ravi, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for a wonderful session. And thank you, Puneet, sir, for coordinate the session.
Pleasure.
Thank you, tech team. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.